Inspire.
From Spire, this is Starting Now, a show about change, resilience, and your next big idea. I'm Jeff Sarris. Today I'm talking to Joel Runyon. Joel's the founder of Impossible HQ, the MoveWell app, Ultimate Paleo Guide, and so many more things. We dive into Joel's story, we dive into what it's like to start a business and grow a business, and really what it looks like to have momentum. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so Joel Runyon, thanks for doing this for the second time in 4 or 5 days, because we had a little snafu last week, but thanks for being here.
Let's do it, round 2. Ding, ding.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about so much last time. We were way over time for how I planned, trying to get these in at 30, 40 minutes, and we were pushing 90 minutes. It was such a great conversation, and then that audio was gone. So that was
we got like 2 seconds of it, I think. We got like,
oh yeah,
and all of your audio. So you had a nice solo conversation on your part.
Yeah, just a one-sided, just nothing, a bunch of silence on the other end. But yeah, so Joel, let's dive in and tell people who you are and what you're up to.
All right, so my name is Joel Runyon. I run a site called Impossible. It's about pushing your limits and doing something impossible and changing your mindset by taking on hard physical challenges. And I have a couple other businesses. I do some advising for startups, but Impossible is kind of like my main baby and the main thing that I've been working on for quite a while at this point. And so it started off as a blog, kind of transitioned to a brand, and it's kind of growing into a business now. And we're coming out with a bunch of physical products. But, the goal is, first to inspire people to push themselves and do something impossible, then train themselves up to be able to be the people to take on these hard challenges, and then fuel and gear these people up as they go out and do these things on their impossible list. So that's sort of the mission and the brand, and we can talk about all the ways we do that.
Oh yeah. So what year was it when you started?
2010, I think it was. So I can do the whole backstory on how I got started with Impossible and all that stuff. But yeah, basically graduated school 2009 and middle of the recession, bad time to do it. Don't recommend graduating in the middle of a recession. And then couldn't get a job for basically an entire year and ended up in my parents' basement thinking like everything in my life seemed impossible. I'd done all the things you were supposed to do and none of them were working out. And I had all my friends, some people were traveling the world. Some people had, started their own businesses. And I was just sitting in my parents' basement, like looking at all these things I wanted to do and thinking they all seemed impossible. And then I tried, ended up taking that word as inspiration to see if I actually could go out and do some of these things that I thought were impossible.
So what were some of the first things then that you did on that impossible list?
Yeah. So basically backstory real quick. Like I said, unemployed for like 9 months after I graduated. I got a part-time job at UPS over Christmas in Chicago, slinging packages. We were supposed to go out for 6 weeks. I only went out for 3 because the economy was so bad. Nobody was shipping packages. They fired us after Christmas. I'm back in my parents' basement. And, like I said, I had friends traveling the world and I was like, I want to do that, but I have no money. And I had a friend quit his job and I'm like, and start his own business. And I love to do that, but I physically can't quit my job because I can't even get a job. And then I had a whole bunch of things on the list, but the one on the list that I didn't have an excuse for was run an indoor triathlon. And I didn't know anything about triathlons. I'd never run one before. I didn't know anyone who had run one before, but I had excuses for why I couldn't travel the world. I had excuses for why I couldn't start a business, but I didn't have any good excuses for why I couldn't get on my bike and ride around the block or put on my running shoes and run around the block. So I wrote that thing down and I started training for it. It took about 6 weeks. And I did my first indoor triathlon at a Lifetime Fitness. I swam for 10 minutes, I biked for 30, and I ran for 20. And I added up my time. And when I finished it, I think my mom was there cheering me on. And I remember thinking to myself, you spent so much time telling yourself that this was impossible and you just did it. If that's true, what other things that could you do if you just, what other things that you currently think are impossible could you do if you decide to just push yourself and train for it? And so that kicked off my blog. I started blogging about it, started blogging about these additional challenges, mostly physical ones I was doing at the time, and then kind of sharing. I started realizing my story was kind of interesting, but people were really interested in how I was able to do some of these things. So I started sharing sort of the how-to behind it, and then kind of grew from there. Started building up a community of people that were interested in pushing their limits and taking on physical challenges, and then come out with training programs over the years, and now come out with impossible shirts where people wear their impossible shirts while they're going to do something on their impossible list. And then, this summer we're coming out with different training products to actually help people fuel on these races and challenges, and to really take away everybody's excuses on why they can't push their limits and do something they didn't think they could do. So that's the
that's
the breakdown, if you will.
Yeah. And I mean, to zoom forward then, actually, I want to do this, since we just did this a few days ago, I want to do it a little differently from last time, change it up a bit. So
Remix.
Let's jump right to today for a moment. Okay. How do you make money? Because I feel like that's always an interesting thing people are curious about with entrepreneurs. It's like, I want to make the leap, but how does someone else go about earning an income?
Yeah. So how I make money now is different than how I used to make money. Like, I mean, for the first 2 years of Impossible, I had a job. Like, I was just starting it as started Impossible as a way to make my life more interesting, not as a business necessarily. And so I had a job for a long time. And then I had a consulting thing on the side, and I was getting better at my job, and I was making more money, but kind of always working a little bit on my side projects.
And what kind of consulting was that?
Just like, so it's basically my day job, but just sold to like third parties. So I was just working extra. So it was marketing. But when I first started, I knew nothing about marketing. So it was literally just like me hustling. Like, I was learning a lot of my day job, and then taking whatever I could learn and finding additional clients for it on the side that weren't target clients of, my employer at the time. And so, but the way I make money now is kind of evolved. So I do a lot less consulting. I do some advising to startups. But Impossible has like an e-commerce apparel line, and we're scaling out with additional physical products, both apparel stuff this summer, and then physical supplements. And then I have a couple other businesses. So I have two businesses that's kind of spun out of Impossible. I have a paleo meal planning nutrition business where we just help people understand really basic real food-based nutrition, paleo, keto, that type of thing. And then I have a mobility and recovery app called MoveWell, which is teaches people how to do things like everybody has a foam roller, and nobody knows what the hell to do with it. So the cheeky tagline of MoveWell is, we teach you what the hell to do with a foam roller. But we basically make mobility routines for everybody from office workers to athletes on how to recover better, improve their overall performance, have less pain, and in like less than 10 minutes a day. So it's been interesting because the growth of both my career and the businesses and money making and all this other stuff has really started from like a really small place of, like I said, I started this whole journey running an indoor triathlon, and then things started evolving and like kind of outgrowths of different things in different places. And it's kind of grown and changed and evolved over time.
Yeah. And I really like how you've adapted. So this is, like we've talked about, this is a show about change, resilience, and your next idea. And you are that idea guy. You come up with it, you run with it, and you test and see what comes out at the other end. And I really like sort of how you've come to some of your ideas, like the MoveWell app, for example. Mm-hmm. So how did that end up coming about, and sort of what was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, so MoveWell started because I was doing an ultramarathon project for Impossible, and I was running an ultramarathon on every continent. So 7 ultramarathons on 7 continents to build 7 schools with pencils of promise. And so we were looking to raise around $200,000 or $300,000, $200,000. And I did this whole build up made this whole show of it. It was like, okay, race number one, go to Patagonia, Chile. And I go to Patagonia, Chile, and I get ready for this race, and I'm running the race, and I'm 26.2 miles in. And sure enough, like 27 miles in, I come down a hill, I get blown across the road with this big tailwind at my back, and end up rolling my ankle really badly. And I've rolled my ankle before, it wasn't a big deal. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna suck it up, hobble for like a half mile and then pick it back up. And I basically ended up hobbling the last 14, 15 miles because my leg was busted up. And I finished and I was like, okay, I'll put on ice and I'll be fine. And I get back to the US and, after being used to doing 20-mile training runs, like it's not a big deal. I could barely run like a quarter mile. And so I had made this big 777 project, made all these announcements, and all of a sudden I couldn't run at all. So I had to take time off to rehab my ankle. And basically took 6 months where I just sat down and rehabbed it. And I noticed when I was going into physical therapy, I was great at it. Super easy, really, really great student, whatever. And they'd like, go home, do your homework. And I would just not do it because I didn't know what to do. It always felt like unnatural. Like I didn't have a step-by-step process for it. And so I decided to make Move Well, which is basically everybody knows they're supposed to do something with foam rollers, but they don't really have anybody to walk them through it. And with PT, it was great because someone's always like, okay, do this, now do this, now do this. And so we basically built a mobility app that does exactly that. Say, for 60 seconds, do this, then this, then this. And they're goal specific. So it's not just like, hey, everybody, roll out your back today. If you have a lower body injury, you probably want to focus on that. And so we tried to design these to be goal specific for whatever routine you need. So that's kind of how Move Well started. And then it's like, okay, well, that's not the biggest project in the world, but it's got like a really small vocal, like I don't want to say a very vocal, even though it's small audience, and they love it. So we just basically scheduled out like this week routines throughout that are going to be releasing every week throughout the end of the year, and just making sure we're scaling that up. So that's just an example of something that I was having issues with personally, and then I kind of pulled some people and found out they had issues with it too, and we decided to fix it, and then we're good to go.
Yeah, so I mean, scratching your own itch is so valuable. I mean, you had the problem, you had the hurdle to overcome, and then satisfying that. I think that's a great thing. Like as an entrepreneur, it's sort of what we strive for. We're trying to solve these problems for people. How long would you say between sort of the aha moment that, oh, hey, this is something that we need, that people need, I need? How long between then and would you say your first, so the MVP, for someone who doesn't know, like a minimum viable product, like how long would you say that was?
That was probably like 6-8 weeks, something like that. It was pretty
Oh,
fast.
wow.
Yeah,
That is
like
so fast.
yeah. Well, I mean, like the thing about this stuff is I tend to keep things simple, maybe too simple sometimes, but um, when we thought about it, it was like, okay, it's basically a list of referenced movements. And so we didn't want to like do this big complex app with all sorts of crazy functionality. It was like, okay, what's the problem? Okay, your legs hurt, your back hurts, your shoulders hurt, your neck hurts. Like you're trying to get loose for a run or for a workout. We had like 10 main pain points that we had. And so we shot a bunch of movements. And we specifically designed the app so the movements could be reutilized. So we wouldn't have to like create new content constantly. And then what was valuable was we created these routines. So there's movements and then there's routines. The routines are made up of movements and specific timing. And so what was valuable was organizing all these movements because they're all the same. There's 50, 100 movements that like people can do on a foam roller, if that. And they're all the same thing, but it's like, okay, how long do you do it for? When do you move? So we basically just built the bones of it. And then we're able to plug and play like, okay, do a hamstring smash for, 30 seconds and then do the other one for 30 seconds. And then, work out your way down your lower body and then flip over. And so we were able to plot this out in a way that was not that complicated. It was basically a video player with a timer. and then the back end was just like a simple database. We didn't even have accounts. We still don't actually have like real like login, save. Like there's a lot of things I like to add, but we didn't start with that. And we found more than like crazy features or anything. A lot of people want to just use the app, get in, get out, and move on with their life. And so we've been really focused on just like building really good content around the routines, because that's what people are more interested in necessarily like crazy functionality. Because the order we give to the movements, because there's a lot of places out there that just have like they've got 500 videos of every single movement you could ever want to do, but it doesn't actually help you achieve your goal. And then there's people with like crazy app functionality, but you're just like, I don't even know where I'm going. I just want to get this done. And so I thought we hit a nice, medium in between those two, where it's like, you got 10 minutes. There's no reason to feel bad. Just get on your foam roller. You can do this during a lunch break. You can do this at your desk. Doesn't matter where. You can do this in the gym. Get it done. And if you do this, you're not going to have like spectacular failures like I did, where I had imbalances in the way I was running and recovering. And it took me getting, massively injured in Patagonia to really wake myself up and realize recovery is important.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think the simplicity, as you said, of how you do things, and you're starting with the small little piece and running with it. I think that's a huge positive in your approach, because we can really get bogged down in the details and the grandiose vision, but you're launching. I mean, you're getting them out there, you're running with it. Is it profitable, and how long did it take to become profitable?
Yeah, it's not like a huge business, but it's also like there's not that many expenses. So like it probably runs like a couple $1,000 a month, which is not like the biggest business, but it's also like it's not my main focus. It's kind of something that we spun up and has, like I said, it's got a pretty small enthusiastic user base. The main problem with it, to be quite honest, is that it's run through App Store purchases. And so Apple, there's a limit on the pricing. Like if we ran it as a web app, like you could probably charge 3 or 4x what we charge. But in-app purchases seem to have a cap on like what people want and are used to be paying. And the other part about that is Apple takes a 30% cut. So like everything that you make, whatever you charge in the App Store is automatically, cut by 33%. So those are the main issues with the current structure. But like at this point, like all our footage is done. The main things that we have are like partnerships where we bring in athletes or trainers and they put together their own routines. We'd like to get to a point where we're shooting custom routines with custom trainers. But right now we're basically bringing in, we have a database of movements and we'll let trainers put together their own routines. And then we do promotions with them. And there's not a lot of overhead. There's not a lot of like ongoing maintenance. The app has like, every once in a while, iOS has an update. But it's kind of become this thing that's like, it's growing organically. Churn rates are great, and it's not I have been surprised. I would have let it go otherwise, but just from a money standpoint, like it's not the biggest amount of income that I've, definitely made, but the volume of the users, like the audio volume of the users that use it and love it is really high. And so we've been kind of the last 2 months scaling our organic push on it. We're releasing a ton more content and we're doing a lot more partnerships, but it's a minimal, like I said, it's not a complicated app. Part of the nice part about that is there's not a lot of things that we could like waste time on. I think a lot of times people get caught up in the complexity of how special or how smart they are, and they don't realize that like you can just keep things simple. And sometimes simpler is like sometimes you could sacrifice a lot of money to like just save a lot of headache. And if you can do that, that's not a bad trade-off to make.
Mm-hmm. And do you have, well, actually, just real quick, looking backwards, would you consider making it a web app first now? Or
Yes.
do you like where it is?
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's, if I was going to invest what I invested in to build it, I would have made it a web app first. It's tougher to, we thought about transitioning it now, and it's a little bit more difficult. There is a web component which you can access, but handling like, I mean, if you want to get super technical on it, like handling like Apple accounts to like a web account, like that involves a whole different, like Apple has security and privacy concerns now. They want everybody, if you have any sort of login at all, now they want you to force you to log in with Apple as an option. And so the App Store has some nice distribution bonuses, but if you're not going to get the bonuses of the distribution on the App Store, you might be better off just like, I already had an existing audience and we're building a larger existing audience from MoveWell. And so then we're sending them basically the App Store. We're losing 33% or 30% just because it's through the App Store. And so what I would do typically, if I could, is either do a low code or no code version of this, and then do it as a web app first, and have it kind of be built as a web app with a mobile first focus rather than trying to do iOS. Because as soon as you build an iOS app, Android people are like, what about Android? And it doesn't matter that pretty much everybody I've talked to across multiple apps, multiple industries makes about 30%. For every dollar you make on an iOS app, you make like 30 cents for the same app on Android. Just because there's more users, but they pay less for some reason. Like I haven't figured it out, but like you always make less money on Google, or people are just way less appreciative to buy something, and you're not even asking. The app itself, I think it's on mobile. It's like $5 a month. It's not that much. It's super cheap, and you'll still have people who be like, the price sensitivity on mobile is really incredible. And so we know there's some competitors out there that charge $17 a month, and they keep 97% of it instead of 66%. And so if we're going to rebuild it, I would probably think that through a little bit more. But yeah, it's kind of, it is what it is right now. And if we were going to retrofit it, it's going to be a bigger thing. So we're going to eventually offer a web offering, I think, but we're going to wait till like, we're either going to have a pre-order list, or we're going to have a wait till like people are yelling at us completely to do it. Because there's a decent amount of work right now in making the two talk together.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's also brilliant that you have it as a monthly recurring subscription, because that is a huge problem. It's like, how do you make something sustainable when someone buys it once? Yes. That's something that like a lot, especially in the web space and WordPress themes and things, it was a really interesting market, and it still is, like, to pursue, but without any sort of recurring revenues, it becomes very challenging, because with every sale, the user base grows, the support grows.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really great that you did that. And looking at your other products too, I don't want to like take you from this thought. Looks like you're about to say something.
No, I was just going to say, like, the thing about recurring that, like, if people are thinking about starting a business around recurring, is like, you have to think about what's the value that you're bringing every single month. I don't, SaaS is really big right now, and people love SaaS, but it's like, how many, I went through the other day, I was thinking through how many subscriptions I have, and it made me almost get sick. But there's everybody wants to do subscription, but then they don't want to add value every single time. And the reason the app has value is we're continually, like, we'll shoot stuff once a quarter or every 6 months, but then we tier it out over 6 months. And so, like, people are getting new stuff all the time, and we're adding, small updates, but noticeable ones. And that's the biggest thing, is like, if you're going to have recurring, I think recurring is a great business model. It's so much more sustainable, especially if you're doing software and you're trying to build something that you can actually invest in. But you also have to think about like where you're adding value, because I even know like some cool software like Gravity Forms. I've had a Gravity Forms subscription for a while, but I'm like, at some point, how much do I need to pay a year for for Forms? And like, 5 years ago, it seemed like reasonable. And now like there's a lot of free plugins that do exactly what that do. So like, where are you building a moat? Are you like making customers sticky? Are you adding more value to them? Like, what are you doing to justify the subscription? And so highly recommend it, because it makes life so much easier from a business standpoint, both for planning, for finances. There's a lot less stress. But you do need to think about, like, if you're going to do that, you also have to shift a little bit of what the product is. Because if you're just going to offer like a theme, sometimes, like, you know, I always think the package of all the different themes that you have is really interesting, because it's like you can, if you churn out one or two new designs every year, that's a bunch of new value that, like, they didn't know they had, or they could, one person starts one site, maybe they're going to start multiple sites and they need more themes. So that's the only other piece of that I would say. But subscription is so much easier. It's just like, it's easier to get a customer that already likes you to give you, another payment, than it is to, go find literally 12 times more customers if you're just going to do a one-off, which is crazy on the economic side of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've already built up that know, like, and trust factor. So once you have that, it's so much easier to sell to someone. And sort of to move on to some of your other projects then. I know at least one with the meal plans is another or I assume subscription-based product. Do you have others subscriptions as well? And sort of how is the, I'd say the income and the attention, how is it sort of distributed across the many platforms and products that you have?
Yeah, so the meal planning one is we have monthly, quarterly, and yearly subscriptions. I think we have a biannual one that some people can buy in a specific funnel, but it's mostly monthly, quarterly, and we see about a 50-50 split between monthly and quarterly. And we like quarterly because it's more money up front and they churn less because it's less billing touches. But that one is just web. Like, you can log in on mobile and it works on mobile, but, like, you're going to log in from a browser. You're not logging in from an app. And I much prefer that. It's a little bit easier for us to maintain. Like, I can play around with web tools a little bit more than I can with mobile development tools, where I'm out of my depth. And then so that's that. And then the stuff we're going to be launching with Impossible, it's going to be like, you can buy stuff one off, but we're going to push subscription and have a ton of bonuses around people who are subscribers, because we want to. It's easier to invest in people who are investing in you, and that's one thing that we found out, is that, like, we don't want just like a one-off customer who's going to give us $20 one time and then pounce. It's hard to add a lot of value to someone who's only giving you $20. But if you can build these repeat customer bases, you can have better experiences, you can sell them better products, and, like, that's the kind of customer I am too. So, like, I'd much rather pay more money and get something nicer than churn through a bunch of stuff and just have, like, unless it's sunglasses. I'm cool with burning through a bunch of really crappy sunglasses. But other than that, like, I'd much rather have something nicer, especially if I have an ongoing relationship with the brand, and then have more ways to interact with them, because it's a much more interesting place to be than always. If you end up charging lower prices, maybe you found this with design stuff. It's like the less money you charge, the worse customers you get, and then the more support requests you have to do on top of that, and it just becomes this, like, stacking thing where you're like, it's not that fun. And then you start getting mad at your customers.
You don't want to be racing to the bottom.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
And so it's like, if you can position yourself like, this is what we do, and this is where we are, and this is, it's not for everybody, and actually mean that. A lot of people say it, they don't mean it, but it's like, this is what we do, this is where we are. Our meal planner is a little bit different position than Impossible, but it's still a higher price point than, a lot of people sell meal plans for like $3 or $4, and it's like, if you're selling 100,000 meal plans a month or something like that, maybe you can do that, but we don't have the scale to pull that off. And so it's like, I'd much rather run a smaller, more profitable company than run, one that's just like the McDonald's of whatever you're at.
Yeah. And how big would you say your company is? Because I know you work with contractors and things.
So I basically have I need to come up with a good title for her, but Chelsea is our GM, basically runs the site. And then we have a whole series of different types of contractors. We have some writers, we have some recipe developers, we have a photographer we brought on last year. That's fantastic. And so it's technically all contractor based, but there's Two of them have been basically, full-time-ish the last couple of years, and Chelsea's been with me for a long time. So, yeah, like the core is probably, two people, including me. And then there's a lot of other, we got a dev, we have a couple devs, actually, a couple recipe developers, a couple photographers. Um, yeah, so I don't know what the numbers on that are. And then we have an agency that we have two paleo related apps. So we have ones that, those are really low touch again. But we have an agency that kind of helps make sure they're not breaking any Apple rules, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, and just thinking about that scale that you've reached, I imagine a lot of people could feel a little overwhelmed. Like, how do I get from day one to that? Because obviously, this is a decade in for you. But what would you
Jeez,
say?
don't make me feel old, man.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But like, what would you say was that transition from solo entrepreneur? We're sort of rewinding a bunch, but when did you bring in the first person? Whether it's your sort of go-to person now or maybe someone previously, how did you decide that it was time to do that?
I think it was like 2013. I brought on like a VA. Well, I had like a VA. So I actually was working, I did lead gen for a company that did outsourcing. And so as part of the thing, like I got like a half-time VA, which is dope. So I got a Filipino VA. Actually, she still like reps Impossible and is like traveling the world now and like coolest
Nice.
VA ever. So that was like 2012. And then 2013, I was doing some more consulting. And so I had like, I just needed to be more efficient with my time because I had more going on. And so I brought on Joanna, who was like the first kind of operator that I worked with. And she helped me with a bunch of different things. And then kind of went through a couple of different people trying to find the right fit and ended up working with Chelsea. And she's fantastic. And kind of been working with her for a while now. So, yeah, I would say like when I started realizing like, um, especially with the paleo stuff, like there's more stuff to do than I could reasonably do on my own. I could easily pay for it, and it it freed me up for the stuff that I was really good at, which is like starting stuff, analyzing things, fixing things, and then like having really um, high value inputs, whether that's in my own companies or in other companies. Sometimes with some of the advising I do, I work with some pretty scalable companies, either in Silicon Valley or Chicago or different places, and it's like sometimes 2 hours of my time in one of those companies it's much more. It makes a lot more sense for me to go do something like that, and then have someone manage the blog schedule on one of the other companies just because of scale issues. And so that's been an interesting piece of the puzzle, is trying to figure out how to balance those two, because I really like getting my eyes on other businesses. It keeps me sharp. It makes me keeps me interested in different things. But I'm fiercely independent too, so I have that kind of balance I have to hit.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that we share. Like, we are very similar in that we're both fiercely independent. We haven't scaled up. We've kept everything within in-house, Dave and I. But the scale that you've achieved while staying completely independent. I mean, this is your company. Well, these are your companies.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is, it's coming from Joel, but you've found a way to make it where you don't have to be there for everything.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that's brilliant. It's great. I mean, so let's jump over to, you did mention Impossible has some subscription stuff coming in. So you have the merch and apparel. Is that something you can talk about? I know it's early in that.
So the merch and apparel has kind of been there for a while. Like, we've been selling Impossible shirts since like 2012, and I've been pushing those for a long time, and we've thousands of shirts at this point. But one, we're looking at upgrading the shirts, both, like kind of like a really nice, really comfortable Impossible shirt right now, but we're looking at upgrading it to like athletic performance one, where you could go to, your hardest workout you've ever done, actually like take it on an ultra marathon with you, and it's not going to be like, it's not going to hold you back. It's going to help improve. So we want to make it on like Nike, Adidas level type quality stuff. I don't know if that's their performance level, not necessarily like their manufacturing standards. uh, so we really want to create awesome gear that people are not just like, hey, this is a cool message, but it's also like, holy crap, this was a game changer. Like, this is my favorite shirt. I'm going to use it anytime I go work out. So that's number one. And then the subscription stuff is really more focused on like product supplements. So the way we're scaling this out is I'm actually trying to get this live sooner than later, but I'm working on an energy formulation. So one of my favorite brands with like my least slash like hate love products is Redbull. I love the way they've built their company. I think the way they like approach like human potential and just like their athletes partnership, like I think it's really cool. But Red Bull is just like, and I actually really like Red Bull, but like Red Bull's terrible for you. There's so much sugar in it. There's so much crap in it. And so basically been building out a clean version of Red Bull that we're going to be launching. I probably can't say it like that. Or a clean energy formulation that we're going to be launching later this year. And then what I want to do is from like the setup of it, it's going to be direct to consumer. We really want to encourage subscriptions, so not just giving people a discount if they sign up for a subscription, but if they end up we have to set the specific benchmarks, but have content bonuses and other things that kick in once people kind of buy in to Impossible, because we want it to be something where, we want it to be something where it's like, okay, this is not just like a one-off kind of cool buy, but it's like, hey, this is like integrated into the workout routine. We're going to add other additional things in the stack as well. And so it's like, it's not just we're inspiring people to push their limits, but we're training them. We have content for them on how to actually do that. We're featuring stories of the athletes that are doing it. And then we're also, creating the apparel that they're wearing while they're doing it and fueling with. So like, that's kind of the lineup that we want to do. And it's been kind of a long time coming, but excited to kind of get it off the ground here the next like month and a half or so, really.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really close.
Now that I said it, I have to get my butt moving. But I'm trying to work on an accelerated time frame because we just talked about keeping things simple. So let's keep it simple.
Yeah, and you built a brand with inspiration and products and things, but finding a way to inject that recurring, that subscription-based model, like I find that can be so challenging sort of in retrospect. Like you have something going, you have this machine rolling, and then finding the thing that makes sense within the system, makes sense for your community. Like that's really good. Like we struggled with that with our paleo stuff, is like you found the way to take Ultimate Paleo Guide and then build in the products, build in the subscription, which was really good. I mean, that's kudos on that. It's really it's a tough area to figure out because so many people have food blogs and so many people have these. It's a lot of rehashed stuff. So then to create a platform that is original, that isn't just repackaging X, like you were taking it, doing all your own recipes and whatnot.
The thing with meal plans is that like you have two types of food blogs, right? You have like you have the ones that go viral, and it's like, my buddy John runs Minimalist Baker, and they have him and his wife Dana, they have a huge blog, millions of views or whatever, and it's all based around Dana, and crazy successful, but they're they don't really sell products. They more have ad revenue, and that's like one of the things that they do. And we were in a weird place where it's like we were a big blog, but we weren't the biggest blog in the world. And if we were just going to rely on affiliate revenue, it's like, you're competing with other affiliates. They could cut you off at any time. It's really tenuous position to be in. And so we wanted to kind of control our own destiny. And, meal planning is like not a terrible way to do that. It's still competitive, but it's not nearly as competitive as just like, 400 people, all trying to rank for the same paleo pancake recipe. Like it's a little bit more, not gated, but there's a little more of a moat to actually point it off.
And it's another simple approach. What you said, 15 minutes, 5 ingredients. Was that it?
Yep.
Yeah. I
And
love
it
that.
was originally, we made all of our own recipes to fit it specifically. So like a lot of places will just scrape other people's recipes, which is cool, but like I don't love it. And you also end up with like mismatched recipes where some are super complex, some are super easy. And we just want to make ours easy and fast. And so it's 15 minutes, 5 ingredients. Uh, that's the deal. And you can do like one click checkout, order your groceries online. Turns out that's actually really nice in a pandemic. Like people are like, yeah, love online grocery shopping. And then yeah, I mean that's like we started off, again keeping it simple. We literally were making the meal plans by hands. Uh, not the not an efficient way to do it, but it worked for a while, and we built up the customer base, and then we did something else. So um, I think a lot of times people are scared to do stuff but manually, but you're like, it's not even being scared to do stuff manually. It's just being scared. I think typically because it's like if, if you can actually make a decent amount of money by writing meal plans by hands, like it's way better than other work out there. So like, might as well give that a shot for a couple months and see what works, and then scale up. So, um, yeah, again, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple.
Yeah, and the see what works part, that's the brilliance of it, I think. Is you're doing it manually, you're not investing thousands and thousands of dollars in
Mm-hmm.
these products that, I mean, who knows? Maybe meal plans, I feel like they were a nice real there would be a lot more confidence in meal plans going from the site that you had. But I
Yep.
mean, sometimes there's products that we know people are going to love. And then you invest all this money, all this time, weeks, months, maybe years in it, and then crickets.
Yeah.
And that is the worst spot to be in.
Well, even a little bit of a reverse. So with MoveWell, we thought like the app, like all this functionality is what people would love, and people really just love the content. So it's like
Hmm.
that content is actually easier for us to make on an ongoing basis than it is to do. Um, it's easier for us to make new content than it is to like add in crazy functionality that people may or may not like. And there's a lot less risk to it. It's like, let's get a videographer, let's get a fitness model, let's go shoot it. And it makes life a lot easier, which is kind of funny that, the things that you think, a lot of people like, I think we build these obstacles up to be bigger than we think they need to be sometimes, because then they're more intimidating. There's more justification on why you can't do it. And then it also takes longer to actually launch it. And so you spend more time in the struggle world versus just being like, what's the simplest way I can get this out there? Boom. What's the fastest way to get feedback? Boom. What's the next, like, and just keep that going. That's, I found feedback and momentum are really, really powerful things. And if you can harness that, without jeopardizing your brand or your product or anything like that, but you can rationalize it. It helps a lot.
Yeah, momentum applies to so much too. I mean, building your community from day one, it's like you're starting at nothing. It's like maybe my mom will read it, maybe a couple of friends on Facebook will click on my link or listen to this podcast, say. But then
Yeah.
over time, it starts to be self-fulfilling, which is phenomenal. Just if you're doing great work, people like to talk about that. They like to share it with their friends, like they got something out of it, and they like to pass it, pay it forward.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think people could feel, I'm not a big energy guy, but like there's something like that. You could feel something's on a roll. And if you can sense that people want to be a part of that. And a lot of that is dictated by kind of how you approach your work. And if you're being consistent on stuff, and if you know, you're continually improving over time, like people can feel that. I'm not going to get super woo on it, but like that's, I think there's a vibe there that people will pick up on if when they see momentum's happening.
mhm. Now, what does a day look like for Joel? Like today, where you have all the businesses and all the different products, what would you say a typical day, or maybe the average of your most typical days, what they look like?
Oh, geez. So now is a little bit different than lately because I'm doing a lot of consulting for this productivity app called Woven. So I'm doing a big advisory thing for them. It's a big productivity app out of Mountain View. I actually started using it last year because I felt like I was out of control with my time and like I wasn't getting anything done. Um, and so the first thing that I started doing last year was like, one, I started treating my calendar like it was my boss. which is annoying because you might feel like this. I'm really independent. I don't like people telling me what to do. And I started my own business because I want to do what I want to do. And I'm not going to do what anyone tells me to. Even if I want to do that, I'm not going to do it just to, like, I'm a 5-year-old on the inside. Like, I'm going to prove that I'm independent, right? And so I realized, like, last year, I wasn't doing all the things that I wanted to be doing. I wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. And so I kind of surrendered to be like, all right, I'm going to let my calendar boss me around. But then I realized, like, I was actually in charge of what I got to put on my calendar. Like, I can let the calendar boss me around, but I get to boss the calendar around. But once the calendar is made, then the calendar is the boss of me. And so I stopped putting things on my calendar that I hated. Like, I just stopped. Like, morning phone calls. No. I don't like them. I don't get excited for them. I will often miss them. Kind of, I think, subconsciously, just because I'm like, I didn't want to be here in the first place, so I'm not going to go. And you can't. Literally a 5-year-old on the inside, and so all that to say, like, Woven actually helped me change a lot of different behaviors, and they need a lot of help with marketing. So last year I offered to help them out with some marketing. So I'm doing a lot of so they're on, like, West Coast time, and so I would say typically, like, especially right now we're in the pandemic, so my main activities right now are working and working out. Like, I don't get a lot of other things between that. Mostly because I have a lot of stuff going on. All the stuff that I'm doing is fortunately not affected by the pandemic. And 3, like, as we mentioned before, I feel like I have a lot of momentum right now. And if you have momentum, don't lose it, because it takes a long time to get back. So I'm trying to take advantage of everything that I'm doing. So that is a long way to say, in the mornings, I try to do creative work, whether that's 6 to 10 or like 8 to 10, 11 or so. I try to get any sort of writing done. Typically, it's writing output or planning output. And I try to block it out of my calendar if I can. If I know I want to do a specific time, a thing for a specific time, I actually mark that out of my calendar, and I say, when that hits, I got to do this task. Because otherwise, I get to like 10 p.m. and nothing ever happens. Around noon, I try to get outside and either go for a walk. I have a kettlebell. I'll take my kettlebell out and I'll walk around with them and, like, do an Instagram story or something like that. But around noon, I basically try to get outside and move, because otherwise I'll go stir crazy. And then I work, I do some Woven stuff from like 1 to 6 or so. And then after 6 to 8, I do impossible stuff. And then, like, I work a lot. And then like after 8, I work out. And then I finish up with, like, emails and random stuff. And then I've got the meal plans and the nutrition stuff. I've got a couple dedicated times a week to talk with people around that. And that is mostly off my plate, which is great. And then I have, like, 1 check-in a week on MoveWell. And then I think that's it. But yeah, right now, like, people talk about work-life balance a lot, and I don't know about you. I do not. I'm not the guy to come to for work-life balance. I find I work very well in a different type of work environment where I sprint really hard, and I know how long I can last at like an extensive work sprint. And then, like, rest. And I will literally just, like, I'll go on vacation. I'll turn everything off. I won't talk to people. Like, I won't, I'm not working. So I find sprint, rest, sprint is much more than, like, finding balance. Because I'm not really a balanced dude. I've never got anything done balanced in my life. Like, all the stuff that, like, I've gotten results on has been like, I'm going to go knock the hell out of this goal right now. And I'm going balls to the wall, and whether that's work, whether that's, like, I didn't get into, like, running half marathons. That was never a thing. It was like, oh, I'm going to start running. Cool. Ultra marathons. What are those? I guess I'll do that. That's my thing now. So I'm not a balanced person. I probably right now I'm working a ton, and I'm getting to the edge of, like, when I need, like, another reset. But all the things I'm doing, I feel at this point like the businesses are set up the way I want them to be set up. I have an opportunity to like continue and build like a ton of strategic momentum, and I would be crazy right now if you know, let up on that because I wanted to watch like more Netflix or something like that. And it's maybe it's workaholism disguised as a hustle or whatever. But the pandemic's been a good reason. It's like you can't socialize anyway, so might as well get stuff done. So um, that was a long ass response to saying, what's your typical day like? But I would say it's probably like creative stuff in the morning, creative stuff in the evening, and then just like admin stuff when I'm like, it's like you just got to triage like emails or whatever. And like luckily all the organization and some of that stuff has already been outsourced and handled by the team. So um, I'm lucky that I don't have a lot of stuff that I'm like, I feel like people get burned out when they're working on stuff that they don't like, or they feel like they got trapped into working on. And I don't feel like I have any of that right now. So if that's the case for me, then I don't have endless energy, but one of the reasons we're building this supplement line. It's like a caffeine based product that gives a bunch of energy. It's like I want that, so I want that for me. And yeah, so
Yeah, I agree there with the start, stop, rest kind of approach. It's something I wrote about recently to our email newsletter that I was calling high intensity interval creating. So just like high intensity interval training, but for the creative side. And I've been doing these podcasts now, and starting the email newsletter. I've been working on a ton of different projects, but it's like, just like you, I have the opportunity right now, the time, the freedom to really just balls to the wall, just go for it and see like, what do I like? What's going to stick? What do I want to keep? But then there is going to be that point where you start to feel, like you said, you start to feel like maybe the burnout is approaching, maybe like, so do you have sort of a metric? Like, do you have any sort of way where okay, I need this reset. I need that vacation. I need that like time away.
Well, I thought I was going to at the end of February. I was like, I'm going to plan a trip, and it turns out not a great time to plan a trip anywhere. So, so I was like, all right, I'm going to keep going. I don't have a way other than saying you have to just sort of internalize this. It's like when people say like, how do you know if you're hurt or injured in like sports? And it's like, I don't know. You have to be injured a couple times to start figuring out like what the line is. Like, I think sometimes you have. Yeah, I talk about pushing your limits. Sometimes you have to butt up against them a couple times, and sometimes you'll realize like that's not a limit. Sometimes you're like, oh, that's a pretty hard limit. So, everybody's like, everybody always asks that question, and I don't think a lot of people actually hit like. I don't think people use that question to pull themselves back a lot from going as hard as they could after something. It's like a built-in excuse. Well, I don't want to overdo it, so I'm not just going to try, or I'm just going to like. I'll waffle along. And, sometimes you'll see people say burnout. But again, I think burnout is much more from working on stuff that's not energizing. I had somebody email me the other day and they're like, well, how do I keep doing, pushing myself. But then at the end of the day, I just feel burnt out. And I'm like, well, you got to be like working on stuff that you get energy from. I think if you work on stuff that you get energy from, like you can get tired, but you don't get, burned out. Like you don't see Elon Musk being like, I'm burned out, and he's running, he's reinventing energy, sending people to Mars, whatever. Like he's working on stuff that's energizing. I think if he was like pushing papers out, like a cubicle job, he would be burnt out. And so I think a lot of times people say like, if you're burned out, maybe you're working on the wrong stuff. Like maybe you need to take a cue and be like, I need to work on better things, or I get rid of the stuff in your life that's causing the burnout. And if you're working on stuff that gives you energy, I think you can do a lot more than you think you can. I mean, there's plenty of people that have like run into burnout from like a work standpoint, but I find their stories end up being a lot more like they got stuck in parts of their business that they don't want to be stuck in, or they were doing things that they didn't care about anymore, or they were just bored. I don't find people have a lot of like, I was really enthusiastic about this still, and I got burned out. Like it doesn't seem to be happening. And so what I would say is like, look at your inputs, what's draining your energy, what are you bad at that's like slowing you down. And if you just focus on doing the things that help build momentum, like you, I don't run into burnout as much. I think I have a pretty high work capacity though, so it could be an outlier. But I like work. I'd much rather work 1,000 hours for myself than like 20 hours for someone else. Like the idea that I get to shape whatever I want to do that's invigorating. And you're also like, how lucky am I that like in a pandemic, I can still work on stuff that I care about. And like, I don't have to worry about like going into like a construction site with like a mask and all this other stuff on. That's like, I don't know. Like, other people have it way worse. I'm pretty happy with like my setup. So if my worst part is like, I'm working a lot right now, like of all the problems in the world, I guess I will take that.
Yeah. And you've chosen. I mean, that's the life that you want. It's what's giving you value. And you've reflected. That's the big thing. I think a lot of people don't reflect on what am I doing? How am I spending my time? Like, why maybe am I unhappy? Even if whether they're working in a job or an entrepreneur, like you're saying, I think it's easy to get sort of tied up in the monotony and the things that you don't want to be spending your time. You essentially become your own boss, and you tried to flee a job to get away from a boss, and suddenly you're your own boss and not doing the things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's great advice. And also you're all about your brand is pushing your limits, and that is you push up against your physical limits, whether it's running and training and whatnot, but also your entrepreneurial like limits in this sense, which I think, it's all very valuable.
Well, also I think, I won't say I'm immune to this because I did run into something like a couple years back where I was just like, I was defeated more so than like burned out even. Like I had a couple like lawsuits and some other things going on. This was right around the time I got injured. And I was just like, I didn't feel burned out. I just felt like I was like losing across the board. And I also was looking at like the stuff and I was like really, and a part of this was even up to about 18 months ago where I was like looking at my life, I was like, you're not doing the things that you really want to be doing. Like I just stopped doing them. And then I just let someone else have it. Like I was mad about this thing. I was like, I don't really want to do this, but like I have to do this. And then I had people on my team that are good at that. So it's like, I could have just let them have it, but no, I wanted to have the control over it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to like, you're going to have it and I'm going to get my life back, or I'm going to get, and the worst part about like having your own, being your own boss is that like, you can't outsource any of the blame. You can't be like, well, my boss made me do this and it just made me really pissed off. You're like, okay, well, my life's not like how I want it to be. Okay, cool. Whose fault is that? Mm-hmm. And then you like look at yourself and you're like, oh God, it's definitely my fault. And the worst part about like those, you remember the lifestyle design term, like the worst part about the design in your lifestyle is like, who designed this? You're not happy with your life, huh? Who did this again? You did? Okay. Stop complaining or fix it. And I've had a couple moments where that's happened where either, whether it was from, being sick of the cold in Chicago and moving to San Diego, or feeling like, I was nomadic for like a year and a half, 2 years, and feeling like I couldn't be I wasn't as productive as I wanted to be, and like moving to Austin and getting a home base. And, you can always change stuff. You can always fix things. And, if you're really upset with something, how something's going, like, yeah, you can blame your boss right now, but like just level up a little bit and be like, what are you choosing in the situation? And what do you want to do? And if you don't like it, change it.
Yeah, I think stop complaining, fix it is the perfect note to end on today. I don't want this
That's good.
To wind up too much, because I mean, last time we're already pushing an hour right now.
Yeah.
We can seriously do this all day. So we're going to have a round two at some point. But for anyone who wants to follow along with what you're doing, what's the best place? Because there are so many platforms, so many products. Like, where would you like to send people?
Yeah. So that's good cutting us off before we get to like 2 hours there. Everybody can check out everything I'm doing at impossiblehq.com. That has pretty much all links. It has stuff to our nonprofit stuff that has, all the media stuff we're doing, and it's got a store attached to it as well. the meal planning stuff is at Ultimate Meal Plans. The MoveWell is at movewellapp.com. And I'm at Joel Runyon on Twitter and Instagram if you want to follow along. But Impossible HQ is kind of the main thing, and if you get there, you'll get to everything else eventually. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, this was another great conversation. It's unfortunate the first one we didn't get to release.
This is recorded, we'll do a second one. This is recorded.
Oh yeah,
right?
this should be good. We should have this. All the backups are in place, all the redundancies, so we should be good to go. But yeah, thanks again for doing this. And yeah, we'll definitely have to schedule in a round 2 somewhere down the line to keep up and see how the new supplement line and everything is coming along.
we should have stuff out by then. So this is good. This is good. It keeps me publicly accountable, and I gotta get my butt moving.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, thanks again, Joel. We'll see you next time.
All right.
See ya. A big thanks goes out to Joel for joining me on this episode. Be sure to follow everything he's up to at impossiblehq.com, and you can follow him on all the socials at Joel Runyon. This episode, as always, is brought to you by Built, your website built for you simply. Built is our platform for building minimalist businesses. We help you start your website, start your blog, build your business, and just head on over to built.co. That's BYLT.co to learn more. And while you're over there, be sure to jump on our email newsletter, Resilient. I send it out every week or two and just give you a little insight on how to help build resiliency into your life and your business. Again, that's built.co, BYLT.co. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening right now, and also on YouTube. As always, I'm Jeff Sarris. This is Starting Now, and I will see you next time.